Hey guys, Gaston with Rough Country. Today we're taking a look at our e-boards for the Jeep JL. Now these are a power running board that are going to replace your factory step, or if you don't already have a factory step, going to complete the step option you need for your Jeep JL. Now the great thing about these is they're going to tuck up and give the appearance of a rock rail when not in use, hiding that factory pinch weld, and drop down to the perfect height when you deploy them. Let's go over what's included in the kit. First of all, we've got our step itself. It is an extruded aluminum. It's got a nice anti-slip surface and coating, and like I said, it's going to give the appearance of a rock rail when in place, and when deployed, it's got a nice wide footing so you can get in the Jeep without a problem. The system also includes 2 motors per side, which is going to allow for up to 660 pounds per side on the step. Also included is going to be a motor guard, so you don't have to worry about bashing the motor on the trail. We've got a full complete harness as well as our control unit. Also included is going to be an override or valet switch, so you can turn the system off whether you have your doors off and you don't want them to deploy, or you just don't want them to deploy when you open the door on the trail. You've got that option. We also include LED lighting, so the step is completely illuminated when deployed. And finally, we've got our door triggers that you're going to put in place and make sure that when that door opens, that step drops down. That's the system. We're going to show you how to install it on this Jeep JL. Let me get it up in the air, remove those factory steps, and we'll knock it out. So the factory step is held on by 3 brackets. Each bracket is going to have 2 10mm nuts at the pinch weld and 1 13mm bolt going up into the floor pan. Once we've got those removed, we can simply grab the step, give it a little twist, and pull it out, drop it down, and that's the removal of the factory step. With the factory step out of the way, you can see what I was talking about as far as the ugly pinch weld, and we're going to cover that up. We're going to reuse the factory mounting points for our motors, front and rear, and we're going to use the center factory mounting point on the passenger side to hold our control unit. All right, now we are ready to install the e-boards. What I like to do is go through my hardware and just inventory it and put it with the item that it goes to. It makes it a lot less intimidating, and you know that you've got everything you need for each part. For instance, I've got my 3 bolts with the lock washers and flat washers. These are going to be for the motor. Then I've got my 2 bolts, lock and flat washers, and flag nuts for the stone guards of the motor. Got my 2 bolts and washers to hold the control module, and that's the complete hardware. So first thing we're going to do is install the control module. I'll grab the hardware, meet you over at the Jeep. Control module is going to mount on the passenger side in the center factory step bracket location. Thread our bolts in and then snug it up. With that secure, let's install the motors. All right, and we have taken all the guesswork out of the motor position for you. As you can see, they are clearly marked for position. We will bring that up into place and install with the supplied hardware. I'm gonna get these started, but I'm not gonna snug it up until I've got all the motors installed as well as the steps installed to the motors. Now we've got our right rear. Our rear motors are going to mount pretty much the same as the front, with the exception of this spacer that's going to be added between the pinch weld and the motor itself. So I'll put the spacer on the motor in place, get this side started. And do the same for this side. All right, now we've got our rock guards. These are going to protect our front motors on both sides. They bolt up using a couple of flag nuts and a couple of bolts, and I'll show you how to do that now. All right, so our guard is going to fit into place right here. It's going to protect this front motor in any kind of off-road situation, and we're going to use these flag nuts to install it. This one is going to go through this access hole, and we've got a slug style that's going to drop into this oval next to this hole. You're going to put it into the oval, then manipulate it so that your threaded portion is visible. Next, we'll take a bolt run it up through the bracket into that nut and secure it. Move it into place. All right. Next, we'll take this flag nut on a stick, run it through the back side of the frame into place, and secure it with a bolt. All right, and we will rinse and repeat all these steps on the passenger side. Go ahead and get these motors mounted, front and back. After that, we will install the front side rock guard, catch us up to the passenger side. All right, now I've laid the harness out to figure out where each end goes. There are essentially 5 ends. The main end is going to go to our controller. Then we've got an end that will go to the driver's side to control those motors and lights. We've got an end that goes to the passenger side to control these motors and lights. We've got an end that runs to the battery to supply power and ground. And finally, we've got an end that goes into the cab to control our trigger switches as well as our valet switch. Now, it seems like a lot, but it's really not. It's all plug and play. And if you lay it out and get a sense for the harness, it's going to be easy. The first thing I did was I brought the harness to the control panel, and I took the side that goes to the driver's side and I routed it over the frame. You really don't want anything hanging below the frame. And you also want to watch out for any moving parts as well as anything that gets extremely hot. So I've got it over the frame here, then it drops down to this cross member. So I've come over the frame, then dropped down, and this section has a silicone sleeve to protect it from heat. Running along this cross member, this will all get cable tied down all the way across this cross member, and I've gone up and through the frame on the driver's side and popped out here, again avoiding being below the frame rail. Now we've got our end that goes to the front driver motor, and we've got our end that goes to our rear driver motor and illumination. Let's get back over here to the passenger side. All right, back over here, we've got our end that goes to the battery, positive and negative. So we'll route that up and into the engine compartment and connect those. Of course, we've got our ends that connect to our passenger side motors and lights. And finally, we've got our end that has our trigger wires and our valet wires. Now these will be routed into the cabin. I'll show you that after we set the Jeep on the ground. For now, I'm going to route the rest of those and get them all tied up. We've got our harness ran for the most part. While the Jeep's still in the air, I'm gonna go ahead and install these step lights. I'm gonna take some rubbing alcohol, clean the spot that we're gonna stick those to, go ahead and figure out where I want them exactly. I think I'm gonna go for as close to the center of each door as possible, stick those on, and connect them to the harness. All right, I've done about all I can do with the Jeep up in the air. Now I need to get it down, remove a couple of interior panels, get our wires ran into the cab, and get our door triggers and valet switch installed. We've got the Jeep on the ground. Now we're gonna remove some trim pieces, fold the carpet back to reveal a plug in the floor pan that we're gonna come through with our trigger wires. So we'll pop this cover off, unplug our door. There's one nut, 10 millimeter, you unscrew that. Then there are a series of clips that will allow you to pop this off, get it out of the way for now. Then we're gonna fold our carpet back to reveal the plug we're looking for, which is right here. All right, I've got our wire and our loom routed through our plug. I'll go ahead and pull that all the way down and reinstall it in the floor. Then we will run our passenger side trigger. We'll run our driver side trigger as well as our valet wires under and over to the driver's side. So I've got our wires ran over to the driver's side. That's going to be our driver's side door trigger wire as well as our valet switch wire. Run it under the carpet, coming out of our grommet. I've got our passenger side trigger wire draped over that way. And then I've got our driver's side trigger wire as well as our valet or on and off switch wires run under and over to the driver's side. All right, we're on the driver's side now. Those wires that I showed you on the passenger side come behind the dash, and the valet switch runs across here, making sure to stay clear of the pedals, and I've got it dropped down here. Now what I'm gonna do is mount it right about here. You can mount it anywhere you want to. This way it's going to be out of the way. The customer will be able to get to it easily and click it on and off as they want to. The trigger wire for the sensor I've got run under the carpet, and it pops up here, so I'll be able to tie it into our magnetic switches when I mount those, and I'll show you how to do that over on the passenger side. All right, we're back on the passenger side. We've got our brown trigger wire. We also have our magnetic switches. We're gonna need to mount those. The front one is gonna mount under the striker about here, and the rear one is actually gonna mount at the lower hinge. I'll show you that in a minute. To route our wiring, we're gonna need to remove some interior panels. So I'll go ahead and I'm gonna pull the seat forward so I can get to this B pillar. There's a small panel here that goes around the bottom of the seat belt mount. We'll pop it out of the way first. We're gonna pop this middle portion of the B pillar panel out first because it overlaps the bottom, and it's just a matter of popping all the clips out, go all the way around, and we'll remove it. Now we can get the lower portion, work the perimeter, popping the clips out all the way around. Give it a pull. Go. Now we're gonna take our magnetic switch harness, and it's got two switches on it. One has a connection for the trigger wire. That's gonna be our front switch. The other has a ground connection with a forked spade, and that's gonna be our rear connection, and I'll show you why. All right, in the rear, we're gonna put our magnetic switch here. You can see that's actually between these two bolts on the hinge. Then we're gonna run our wiring behind our trim so that we can take our ground connection and run it back here to this existing body ground. It's the same on the driver's side. And again, anywhere that we're gonna be using the 3M double stick tape, we're gonna wanna make sure we clean really good. I'm using some alcohol. You can use degreaser if you want to. I'm just gonna go around and clean all the spots that we're gonna put our switches and magnets. That way we know they're gonna stick and they're gonna stay there. Then we'll route our wires to the back, making sure to avoid the seat belt and the airbag, of course. This wire stays up front. Actually, we can go ahead and connect it. We will just connect that and then make sure our wiring is tucked out of the way. All right, we'll do the same for the rear. Put it right there. We're gonna loosen this 10mm bolt on this body ground, just enough so that we can slide our connector underneath, and then we'll tighten it back up. All right, and we want to position the magnet so that it comes as close as possible to this sensor when the door is shut. Peel the back off. Attach the magnet. We'll install the front as well. Just double checking my position. Now we will repeat that process on the driver's side. Now I just need to reinstall all my interior panels and get that squared away. Then we'll be ready to install our step boards and finally connect the power and ground at the battery. Now we're gonna mount our override switch here. I've already cleaned this panel with alcohol. I'll bundle this wire up, zip tie it, tuck it nicely up under the dash, peel off our backing, press firm. With the override switch installed, we are finished with the interior portion of this running board install. The last things we need to do are take the actual board, mount it to the motor arms, and then connect our power. So the mounts on our running boards actually slide in this channel, which is gonna allow us to center the board exactly how we want it on the Jeep. All we need to do is take these mounts, drop them into the pockets on the motor arms, and then attach them using these Allen bolts. You can see there's a pocket that is an exact fit for this bracket here. So we will line that up and drop it into place. There we go. It kind of locks and holds itself. I'll start one of the bolts to keep it there. I'll come down here, line this side up. And I'll do the same. I'll start one of the bolts. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and temporarily connect our power. That way we can have our arms retract and I'll have easier access to the bolts and get those tightened. Once I've got the board tightened to the arms, we'll test to make sure it functions up and down properly. Then we'll go ahead and cinch down all those bolts that we left loose on the motor. After that, the installation will be complete. All right, let's give it a test. Looks good to me. We're gonna go ahead and pop it back open, leave it open so I can get to these bolts. We're gonna snug those the rest of the way down. All right, so here's our harness. We ran it up the frame rail into the engine compartment and up to the battery, avoiding anything that gets hot and or is moving. Now we will simply connect it to the terminals. All right, I've repeated the steps of adding the step board to the motor arms on the driver's side. Also went ahead and tightened those motors that we had left loose down. And that completes the installation of our e-board steps on this Jeep JL. What we ended up with is a great looking, unassuming board that gives you rock rail vibes before it's deployed. And with the pull of a handle, drops down to the perfect height so you can use it to get in and out of your Jeep without an issue. So if you're looking for the ultimate in step options for your Jeep JL, you're looking for Rough Country's e-boards. Check them out today at roughcountry.com.